Let me tell you something that most people will never understand until it's too late. Your life will never rise above the standards you set for yourself. Not your dreams, not your goals, your standards. We all have a list of what we want. We want success. We want love. We want health. We want freedom. But wanting something and committing to a standard are two completely different games. The truth is, we don't get what we want. We get what we tolerate. And the moment you draw a line in the sand and say, I will no longer accept anything less than this, your life begins to shift. Your energy changes, your behavior follows. The people around you either rise with you or fall away. Change doesn't begin with strategy. It begins with a decision, a moment where you say, this is my new normal. And once you raise that internal bar, once you make excellence your minimum, the world, because life doesn't give you what you hope for, it gives you what you demand from yourself consistently. You don't get what you want in life, you get what your standards demand. That's not a motivational quote. That's a law. It's the difference between people who dream and people who achieve. Most people go through life asking for things, asking for happiness, success, fulfillment, but they're not backing that desire with a non-negotiable standard. And the world responds not to what you say you want, but to what you insist upon through your actions, your beliefs, and your identity. Every result in your life right now, your body, your bank account, your relationships, your career, is a direct reflection of your standards. Not what you're hoping for, not what you're wishing would change, what you're truly committed to. It's brutal, but it's also empowering. Because when you fully accept that truth, you take your power back. You stop playing the victim. And you realize that if you want to change the external, you must first change the internal agreement you've made with yourself about what is acceptable and what is not. Think about it. Everyone wants to be wealthy, but very few are. Everyone wants to be fit and energized, but most aren't. Why? Because most people have goals, not standards. A goal is something you write down once and feel good about. A standard is something you live by every single day, even when it's uncomfortable, especially when it's uncomfortable. That's the separation point between average and exceptional, between wishing and doing, between people who live a life of excuses and those who live a life of impact. Let me be clear. The standards you live by become the foundation of your identity. If you see yourself as someone who always finds a way, who follows through no matter what, who doesn't settle for average in any area, then your life will begin to reflect that self-esteem. Not because the world magically delivers it to you, but because you'll take different actions. You'll make different choices. You'll tolerate less. And you'll stretch more. You'll walk away from the things that drain you, and you'll lean into the challenges that grow you. But if your standard is, I just want to get by, then that's exactly what you'll get. Just enough to survive, never enough to thrive. If your standard is, I'll eat clean until it gets hard, you'll bounce from diet to diet and never break through. If your standard in your relationship is, as long as they don't leave, you'll tolerate behavior that slowly kills your soul. The problem is never the circumstance. It's the standard you're holding yourself to in the face of that circumstance. And raising your standards doesn't have to be dramatic or loud. It can be quiet. It can be a shift you make in your heart in a moment where you say, I don't do that anymore. That version of me is gone. And then you back it up with action. You wake up earlier. You push through the resistance. You stop responding to drama. You stop chasing validation. You choose growth, not comfort. And suddenly, the world starts responding differently. Not because it changed, but because you did. You have to understand, this isn't about being perfect. This is about elevating what you're willing to accept. It's about eliminating excuses and replacing them with ownership. It's about no longer being okay with being tired all the time, broke all the time, frustrated all. It's about raising your baseline, not once, but permanently. And yes, it's going to be uncomfortable. That's the point. Growth lives outside your current standards. If you want a different life, you need to become a different version of you, not someone else. Just the version of you that holds higher expectations, that demands more from yourself, not because you hate where you are, but because you respect where you're going. Standards are the starting point of all transformation. They drive your habits, your focus, your attitude. And here's the beauty of it. You don't need permission to raise them. You don't need to wait for the perfect moment or someone else's approval. You just need a decision, a real one, a decision backed by action, a decision that says, this is who I am now, and I no longer operate below this level. And when you make that kind of decision, everything changes. You'll find that your standards become contagious. People around you will either rise with you or fall away. You'll stop attracting drama and start attracting excellence. You'll feel more alive, not because life got easier, but because you got stronger. Because when your standards rise, your actions follow. And when your actions shift consistently, your results begin to align with the life you used to only dream about. So if you want to change your life, stop focusing on changing everything out there. Start with your standards. Look in the mirror and ask, what am I settling for? Then raise the bar. Not someday, right now. Because the moment you do, your life begins to change. Not overnight, but inevitably. Because your standards, most people stay stuck not because they don't know what to do, but because they keep negotiating with mediocrity. They justify their limitations. They argue for their excuses. They reason themselves into average. Every time you say, it's okay just this once, or it's not that bad, you reinforce a pattern that keeps you small. You begin to condition your mind to accept less than what you're capable of. And before long, it becomes normal. Not because it is, it never was, but because you've allowed yourself to become comfortable with low standards, soft habits, and a life that doesn't reflect your true potential. We all know what that negotiation sounds like. I'll start tomorrow. At least I'm better than most. I'm not failing. I'm just figuring it out. But let me tell you something. Mediocrity is seductive. It will talk to you sweetly. It will tell you to relax, that you deserve a break, that you've done enough. It'll wrap itself in rationality. It'll say, you've worked hard, or it's just one day. But it's never just one day. It's a pattern. It's a mindset. It's a subtle slide into becoming someone you no longer recognize. Someone who once had fire and now only makes excuses. You have to decide right now that you are done negotiating with that voice, because that voice isn't you. It's your fear, it's your past, it's your old identity trying to pull you back into comfort. But comfort is not the goal. Growth is the goal. Purpose is the goal. Becoming the person you were born to be is the goal. And that version of you, the real you, does not make deals with mediocrity. There's a moment in every person's life when they hit a threshold, a point where they say, I'm done. I'm done settling. I'm done accepting less. I'm done listening to that voice in my head that tells me to lower my standards just to make it easier. That's the moment when transformation begins, not when everything's perfect, not when you're motivated, but when you finally stop tolerating your own excuses. That's when you go from wishing for change to creating it. See, when you stop negotiating with mediocrity, you stop compromising on the things that matter most. You stop hitting snooze on your dreams. You stop giving up when things get hard. You stop letting your current circumstances define your future. You stop shrinking yourself to fit into other people's expectations. And you start showing up, not just when it's easy, but especially when it's not. That's when the real you steps forward. That's when your standards rise. That's when your energy shifts. You begin to operate from a place of certainty, from a place of power, from a place of ownership. You don't wait for someone to push you. You push yourself. You don't need a cheerleader. You become your own. You don't avoid challenges. You face them because you know they're the pathway to your next level. It's not about being perfect. It's about being done with average, done with giving half effort, done with being okay with good enough. Because the truth is, you were never meant to be average. You were born with something inside you that is powerful, unique, and capable of extraordinary impact. But that part of you can't thrive in a life where mediocrity is acceptable. It only comes alive when you demand more from yourself. When you say, I know there's more in me, and I'm no longer settling for anything less. And yes, it's going to be uncomfortable. You're going to want to quit. You're going to hear that voice again telling you to take the easier path. But that's the test. Every time you silence that voice, Every time you choose discipline over distraction, action over excuses, standards over softness, you build a new version of yourself, a stronger version, a version that no longer negotiates with mediocrity because they've tasted what it feels like to live in integrity with their potential, and nothing less will satisfy. It's not about hustling for the sake of hustle. It's about honoring your calling. It's about building a life that reflects who you really are. It's about no longer being available for things, people, or behaviors that keep you stuck. You're not lazy, you're not broken, you're just surrounded by low standards that you've been tolerating for too long. And the minute you raise those standards and stop making deals with average, everything changes. Your habits change, your peer group changes, your energy changes, your outcomes change. So the question is simple. What are you still negotiating with? What lie are you still telling yourself to stay small? What have you been tolerating that no longer aligns with who you want to become? It's time to make a new agreement, one where you stop asking, what can I get away with? And start demanding, what's the highest standard I can hold myself to today? Because that question, that standard, that commitment will take you further than any strategy or motivation ever will. You were not designed for a life of mediocrity. You were built for greatness. But greatness only reveals itself when you stop making deals with average and start making decisions that reflect your highest self. And that journey begins the moment you stop negotiating and start committing. You don't need to have it all figured out. You just need to start showing up as the version of yourself who would. You don't need to be confident all the time. You just need to act like the person who moves forward even when they're uncertain. That's the game. Identity is built through action, through proof, through evidence. You don't wait until you feel worthy. You build worthiness through consistent, courageous decisions. And let's be honest, the world will always try to define you. People will try to put you in a box based on who you've been, based on your past mistakes, your current struggles, your background, your circumstances. But none of that has to define your future unless you let it. You are not your past. You are your decisions. You are your discipline. You are the standard you hold when no one's watching. That's your identity. And if that identity isn't empowering you, it's time to change it. Because once you change how you see yourself, you change what you expect from yourself. You stop accepting average. You stop tolerating excuses. You start demanding more, not from a place of ego, but from a place of alignment. Because when your identity and your standards are aligned, there is no gap between what you want and what you create. You no longer have to fight for motivation. You live from a place of mission. You no longer need external validation. You've built internal certainty. You become the kind of person who naturally produces excellence, not because it's easy, but because it's your new normal. And this is the truth that changes everything. When you shift your identity, you don't just change what you do, you change what's possible. You unlock levels of clarity, consistency, and capacity that were always inside you, just waiting for you to stop seeing yourself through the lens of limitation. And when that shift happens, life doesn't just improve, it transforms. Not because the world changed, but because you did. Pain is the catalyst for higher standards. Most people try to avoid it, numb it, run from it. But the truth is, pain is a gift. It's a messenger. It shows up when something in your life is no longer aligned with who you're meant to be. And while the world teaches us to fear pain, the most successful, fulfilled people you'll ever meet have learned to use it. They don't run from it, they lean into it. They let it burn away the parts of them that no longer serve the vision they're building. Breakthrough doesn't come in comfort. It comes when the pain of staying the same becomes greater than the pain of change. That's when you snap. That's when you say, I've had enough. That's when the old version of you dies and the next level begins to emerge. That's when you raise your standards, not because you read it in a book, not because someone told you to, but because you feel it in your gut. You reach that moment of total emotional leverage and you make a decision that you will never again return to the way things were. We don't change when things are kind of bad. We change when things get unbearable, when the weight of mediocrity crushes your spirit, when the lies you've been telling yourself no longer work, when you wake up and realize that the life you've been tolerating isn't even close to the one you're capable of living. That's pain doing its job. That's pain waking you up. And in that moment, you can either resist it, numb it with distraction, or let it fuel your transformation. Think about it. When did you grow the most? It wasn't when everything was going smoothly. It was when you were tested, when your heart got broken, when your back was against the wall, when you lost something or someone that mattered, when you were forced to decide, am I going to let this define me, or am I going to use it to redefine myself? That's the beauty of pain. It pushes you into decisions you've been avoiding. It forces you to raise your standards, not out of inspiration, but out of necessity. Some people wait until life forces them to change. They wait until their health collapses, until their relationship falls apart, until the bills pile up, until the dream is dead. But the most powerful shift you can make is to use pain early. Don't wait until it gets unbearable. Listen when the discomfort starts whispering, when you feel the unease in your soul telling you you're meant for more. That's your moment. That's your call to raise your standards before life forces you to. Because here's the truth. Pain can either break you down or build you up. It depends on what you do with it. If you try to avoid it, it will chase you. It will grow. It will keep coming back louder and louder until it has your full attention. But if you face it, if you embrace it, if you use it to make new decisions, to take new actions, to set new standards, it becomes your power. It becomes your edge. It becomes the fuel that drives you beyond anything you thought you were capable of. People who achieve extraordinary things aren't lucky. They're not superhuman. They're people who got sick of their own excuses, people who hit emotional rock bottom and said, never again. That never again moment is where the shift begins. It's not the prettiest place. It's not the most comfortable place, but it's the realest place. Because in that place, you stop lying to yourself. You stop blaming other people. You stop waiting for someone to come save you. You finally look in the mirror and take ownership. And that's when everything changes. Pain is also honest. It strips away the fluff. It shows you what matters. It reveals the habits, the environments, the relationships that are dragging you down. It brings everything to the surface. And from that clarity, you can finally say, I'm done living like this. And when that statement comes from deep enough pain, it becomes a commitment, not a wish, not a preference, a full body, full heart, no turning back kind of commitment. And from that commitment, standards are born. New behaviors are born. A new identity begins to emerge, not because you read it on a vision board, but because you were forged in fire. You felt the pain of wasting time, of holding back, of living small, and you chose something higher. That choice becomes the foundation of a new life. That choice separates the few who rise from the many who stay stuck. So if you're in pain right now, don't run from it. Sit with it. Listen to it. Let it show you what needs to change. Let it strip away your excuses. Let it make you hungry. Let it remind you of who you really are. Your environment will either elevate your standards or slowly erode them. You can have all the ambition in the world, all the drive, all the intentions. But if you surround yourself with people, places, and patterns that reinforce who you were instead of who you're becoming, you'll stay stuck. Not because you don't want to grow, but because growth becomes a fight against the gravitational pull of your surroundings. And the truth is, most people underestimate just how powerful that pull really is. If you're around people who settle, eventually you'll settle. If your circle avoids responsibility, you'll start to think that's normal. If the people closest to you complain more than they commit, your standards will slowly slip, not by conscious decision, but by proximity. Human beings are tribal by nature. We conform to our environment, not out of weakness, but out of survival. The brain is constantly scanning, asking what's safe here, what's accepted, what's average. And whatever the answers are, that's what you'll start to mirror. Unless you make a conscious decision to choose a higher standard and surround yourself with people who reflect that decision. If you want to raise your life, raise your environment. Audit it like your life depends on it, because it does. What do you see when you wake up? What do you hear throughout the day? Who do you talk to most? What kind of language do they use? What kind of energy do they bring? What do they expect from themselves and from you? That's not just background noise. That's either reinforcing the identity you're stepping into or the one you're trying to outgrow. Too many people try to create massive change while staying in toxic environments and then wonder why they keep slipping back into old habits. It's like trying to heal while standing in the same room that made you sick. It's not impossible, but it's slow, painful, and often unsustainable. Your standards need support. They need reinforcement. They need to be surrounded by energy, people, and systems that pull you forward, not drag you back. This doesn't mean you have to cut everyone out of your life, but it does mean you have to stop giving equal time and influence to people who are committed to staying stuck. Love them, but lead them by example. Raise your own standards so high that they feel compelled to rise with you or uncomfortable enough to fall away, not because you're better, but because you've made a different decision. You've decided that growth is non-negotiable. And that decision comes with consequences. Some people won't understand it. Some will criticize it. Some will walk away. But you've got to be willing to outgrow people, places, and patterns that no longer serve your vision. It's not just people either. Your environment includes your habits, your rituals, your digital inputs, your space, your schedule. Is your home set up to support your energy or drain it? Is your calendar filled with high-value activity or mindless busyness? Is your phone feeding you inspiration or distraction? Every detail matters because every detail sends a message to your subconscious about what's important. And if you keep tolerating clutter, chaos, and low standards in your space, you'll begin to tolerate them in your life. That's why environment design is so powerful. You don't need more willpower. You need fewer temptations. You don't need more motivation, you need better systems. You don't need to force discipline every single day. You need to set up your life in a way that makes the right actions automatic. Success isn't about fighting your environment. It's about creating one that makes success inevitable, where your standards are reinforced by what surrounds you, not undermined by it. Imagine waking up in a space that energizes you, talking to people who challenge and inspire you, listening to content that sharpens your mind instead of numbing it, moving through routines that support your focus, your health, your purpose. That kind of environment doesn't just help you win. It makes it harder to lose. It becomes the fertile ground where your highest standards can take root and thrive, but you have to choose it. You have to build it. Because if you don't, life will hand you one by default. And default environments lead to default outcomes. You'll drift. You'll wonder why your standards keep slipping. And you'll convince yourself that it's a motivation problem when it's really an environment problem. You're trying to climb a mountain while tied to anchors. You're trying to ignite a fire while standing in the rain. So the question is, what are you still tolerating in your environment that's holding you back? Who are you giving access to that no longer earns it? What parts of your life need to be redesigned to match the version of you you're committed to becoming? Don't just think about it, act on it, change your space, upgrade your inputs, set new boundaries, build new rhythms. Create an environment so aligned with your highest standards that even on your off days, you're still moving forward. Because when your environment reflects your vision, your standards stop feeling like effort. They become your baseline. And from that baseline, you don't just grow, you soar. There is a line in life between those who want and those who demand, between those who wish for things to change and those who refuse to settle for anything less than transformation. That line is commitment. Not interest, not excitement, not motivation, commitment. The moment you draw a line in the sand and say, this is who I am now, this is the standard I live by, this is the level I operate at no matter what. That's the moment your life begins to shift permanently, because true commitment rewires the way you show up to everything. Most people don't live committed, they live curious. They flirt with better habits, better relationships, better finances. They dip a toe in the water of change, hoping it'll feel good enough to keep going. But when it gets uncomfortable, when the old life pulls at them, when progress feels slow, they retreat. Not because they're weak, but because they never decided with full certainty. They never burned the boats. They always left an escape route to their old identity. And as long as that back door is open, you will never fully rise. Raising your standards is not a temporary shift. It's a new identity forged by relentless commitment. It's waking up every day and choosing the version of yourself who refuses to compromise. It's showing up with the same intensity on the days you're tired, on the days no one is watching, on the days nothing feels like it's working. Because you're no longer living based on how you feel. You're living based on what you've declared. Your life is no longer being shaped by mood or circumstance. It's being shaped by your non-negotiables. That's what makes you powerful. Not perfection, not hype, not talent, but the fact that you've drawn a line and you don't cross it. You've raised your floor so high that even your worst days are better than your old best. That doesn't come from motivation. It comes from being sick of the old story, from being disgusted with settling, from knowing in your core that the life you're living is not your full potential, and using that dissatisfaction to fuel an unshakable level of discipline. People think discipline is punishment. It's not. Discipline is freedom. Because when you're committed, you stop negotiating with yourself. You stop wasting energy on decisions that used to derail you. You don't ask yourself, should I show up today? You just do. You don't ask, should I lower my standards because it's hard? You keep them high. And in that consistency, you gain momentum. And in that momentum, you gain belief. And eventually, you become someone who no longer needs to chase confidence because you've built it from the inside out. Commitment also means you don't get to blame anymore. You don't get to point the finger at circumstances or other people or your past. You take ownership, full, radical, unfiltered ownership. You say, if this is going to change, it starts with me. And when that level of responsibility kicks in, it activates a power inside you that most people never tap into. A power that doesn't need perfect conditions, a power that creates results even in the storm. Because it's not about convenience anymore, it's about who you've chosen to become. And you'll know you've truly committed when you stop needing external validation, when you no longer need applause to keep going, when your standard is so deeply internalized that you would rather be misunderstood with integrity than liked while compromising. That's when you're dangerous, in the best way. Because you're no longer living to fit in. You're living to stand out, to rise up, to break cycles, to show others what's possible when a human being refuses to shrink to their environment. This isn't about hype or hustle culture. This is about integrity with yourself. Can you look yourself in the mirror at the end of the day and say, I honored my word to me, not to anyone else, to you? Because when you consistently do that, when you keep promises to yourself, you build an inner strength that can't be taken. And from that strength, everything becomes possible because you're no longer trying to find the path, you are the path. You've decided, you've committed. And the world adjusts to that kind of energy. The beautiful part is that commitment compounds. Every time you choose discipline over comfort, your standards rise. Every time you show up when it's hard, your identity strengthens. Every time you push through resistance, your belief grows. And those small wins, those moments when no one is watching, they start to add up. Until one day you look around and realize you've become the kind of person you used to admire. Not because of some massive overnight shift, but because of your unrelenting decision to never go back to who you were. You don't need more time. You don't need better resources. You need a moment, a defining moment, where you decide that the old life is no longer acceptable, that your standards are no longer optional, that your word is law. And when that moment comes, everything changes. Not because the world becomes easier, but because you become unshakable. That's the power of true commitment. It's the foundation that every lasting transformation is built on. And once you make that decision, there is no turning back, only rising forward.